No, that's a great story. I can't believe you found an urn. When you called the tenant and said, "Hey, I have your grandma," what did they say?
So yeah, he knew who it was. It was actually a friend of his. Um, yeah, so just really, kind of bizarre, strange things that you come across with these tenants sometimes that you're gonna have to deal with.
That's good to know. Julian, have you ever found something crazy in one of your tenants' apartments or houses when you were moving them out?
Yeah, fortunately, I haven't had to rent a U-Haul and move any of my tenants out yet. Um, I will say I did have a tenant that moved out on their own, and they kind of skipped out on the last month's rent once, right? But believe it or not, they left the apartment, fine. Like they broom swept it. So, and I think part of that is the reason I was like I haven't had that is I try to get like, and this is where some investors kind of laugh at me. They say, "Oh, Julian, you shouldn't get to know your tenants and all that stuff." And I don't necessarily agree with that, right? I've built relationships with folks, and even the worst of tenants, right? Like they try to, I try to get to know them on a one-to-one basis, on a human level, not necessarily just being their landlord, if you will. So even those, I'll call them, the bad tenants that I had, they weren't so bad, if you will. Yeah, they skipped out on the last month's rent. Okay, I'm not gonna go to small claims court and waste my time to chase them because for the amount of times you have to go through to court to go through that process, it just for a month's worth of rent, it just isn't worth it. But no, I haven't had anything like that yet. I did have one tenant where I had to go make some repairs, and there was a huge bong laid out, in the middle of the living room. You know, that was pretty funny. But besides that, nothing too crazy.
And so it sounds like you guys have a pretty good systems because I know Chris, we talked about in the last episode with the force appreciation, and you kind of went in there anticipating having like having headache tenants. But in your guys' experience, what systems or processes do you guys employ to make sure you have a quote unquote good tenant as opposed to a bad tenant? So you don't have to rent your own U-Haul for the tenant.